Welcome to episode 307 of No Direction, the No Direction Network Pathfinder News Reviews and News podcast. I'm Ryan Costello. This month we're talking to Jason Bulmahn and Joe Pasini, and by we I mean me. I still think of myself as a whole podcast, and a podcast is more than just one person. I am speaking with Jason Bulmahn and Joe Pasini about Pathfinder Quest. It is a new cooperative tabletop game that Paizo is pushing hard. Paizo seems very excited about it. They've put out several promotional videos, and just every single one of them just kind of exudes this joy and excitement. And I was curious about what it was that Paizo saw in Pathfinder Quest that we as Pathfinder fans should all be excited about. Now, in that conversation, I was reminded of another Pathfinder game that wasn't the Pathfinder role-playing game. And it just got me thinking about all the different ways you can play Pathfinder other than the Pathfinder role-playing game. I came to Pathfinder from 3.5 Dungeons & Dragons, and I always played homebrew campaigns in a homebrew setting. And so to me, what Pathfinder was an extension of the rule system that I really like. An extension, a revamping, a polishing. But it was the rules, primarily, and really exclusively, until I started getting into Pathfinder as a fan and realizing that to some fans, Pathfinder was a setting. It was a world. It was a campaign setting. It was their Forgotten Realms. It was their Eberron. And the rules were just a means to an end for them. Now, I was I was going to say I was young. I was in my 20s, and by then I'd been role-playing for 10 years. So I probably should have been aware that to some people, the setting was as important or more important than the system. But this was early internet, and before that, pre-internet days. And so I guess I just missed it. I was tunnel-visioned into my own personal experience and was not as aware of what other people were doing in the same hobby as me. But it was undeniable that this was how some people saw Pathfinder, and the best evidence of this was the fact that you could play Pathfinder without playing Pathfinder. So I just wanted to go over some of the different ways you could play Pathfinder other than playing the Pathfinder role-playing game. Number one, other role-playing games. Technically, the Pathfinder setting and Pathfinder Adventures existed before the Pathfinder role-playing game ever existed. In fact, Rise of the Runelords, the seminal Pathfinder adventure, the one that kicked off the Adventure Path line, was published under 3.5 Dungeons & Dragons rules. So while it's only marginally different from first edition Pathfinder, technically speaking, if you want to play Pathfinder and you don't want to play Pathfinder, you can play 3.5 Dungeons & Dragons Pathfinder. But of course, this led into Pathfinder First Edition. Pathfinder Adventures for the next 10 years were all published under the Pathfinder role-playing game. Then in the 2020s, things got a little freaky. So first of all, Second Edition came out. And with it a playtest, but I'm not counting the playtest as editions. But shortly after the release of Second Edition, Pinnacle Entertainment Group did something that I didn't think anyone would ever do, and that is they licensed the rights to make a Pathfinder role-playing game adaptation. They turned Rise of the Runelords into a Savage Worlds adventure. Now, Rise of the Runelords at that point was super associated with Paizo. Like, it is one of the most supported and revered adventures that Paizo had ever put out. And the Pathfinder name was plastered all over it. It was synonymous with the Pathfinder Adventure Path line. But for people that maybe neither edition or 3.5 Dungeons & Dragons, so neither edition of Pathfinder or 3.5 Dungeons & Dragons wasn't their cup of tea. Savage Worlds is a lighter, more narrative-focused role-playing game, and so this product allowed people to enter into the world of Pathfinder that we all knew and loved in the same way we did through Rise of the Runelords, but without having to worry about whatever issues they had with the Pathfinder role-playing game systems. Now, in addition to the Rise of the Runelords, they released their own version of the Advanced Player's Guide. They released the Curse of the Crimson Throne Adventure Path. Basically, Pinnacle went all in supporting a Savage Worlds version of Pathfinder. And this kind of changed the game. Okay, literally, but like it means that any role-playing game publisher out there with their own house system could potentially talk to Paizo and also be licensees of the Pathfinder world. Or, if these other companies have some kind of open license, it also means that Paizo can publish material for other role-playing games, which was the case with Abomination Vaults for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Now, first, I need to address a conspiracy theory. There were some people that were saying that this was evidence that Paizo was giving up on second edition. The second edition was, by some interpretations, a failure, and therefore Paizo was going to become a third-party publisher of 5th edition material. Here's the thing. Logistically speaking, the most expensive part of publishing a role-playing game is the art, especially when it's of the quality of the product that Paizo puts out. And Paizo buys the art outright, so they own the art, which means that if they find more ways to reuse the art, such as in pawn sets or just other products, then technically that piece of art gets cheaper every time it gets reused. Or looking another way, the art budget of another project gets cheaper every time it gets reused. So with Abominations Vaults, they could produce an entire experimental supplement just to see what the 5th edition interest is in the Pathfinder world and Pathfinder Adventures without having to pay a dime into the most expensive part of publishing a new role-playing game. That doesn't mean it's automatically going to be successful. There's still the production costs, and what Paizo did with Abomination Vaults was actually like exactly what they needed to do. They brought in people who knew 5th edition. They made sure that it wasn't just a one-to-one translation of the adventure. They made sure that it followed the rhythms of 5th edition and that it was a proper 5th edition adventure. So there was design and development time that went into it, even though the adventure already existed. But still, it was... it would have to be like ridiculously successful for it to replace Pathfinder 2nd edition, because it was just a way of getting more use out of something that they'd already paid for. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, it is cool that if you are playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and you know, statistically, you probably have, then having the option to play a Pathfinder adventure, and a very popular one of the most popular ones of the new edition, getting to play it as a 5th edition module is a novelty for us as Pathfinder players and is a whole new experience for Dungeons & Dragons players. Now, if you're listening to No Direction, odds are you aren't looking for another role-playing game system to play Pathfinder. However, you might be interested in some of the other ways that you can play Pathfinder, such as the adventure card game. The adventure card game doesn't get talked about much now, and probably because it ended around the same time 2nd edition launched, and so a whole new crop of influencers became exposed to Pathfinder and like started spreading the message on the internet. But the Pathfinder adventure card game was huge. It came out in 2013 at Gen Con, and at that point, Paizo had this streak of underestimating demand for their new product. But never did they underestimate demand like they did for the adventure card game, because the box set came out and sold out in 4 hours on day one. Normally, they sell out Saturday afternoon, but of the new role-playing game releases. But no, this just took the gaming world by storm. It was on the hot list on Board Game Geek for months. It was well reviewed, and it was not only fully embraced by the board gaming community, who were looking for the next level up of deck building games, which were very popular at the time, but there was a faction of Pathfinder fans that were big into the adventure card game. And luckily for them, Paizo was very supportive of it. They had an adventure card game, Pathfinder Society. The Adventure Card Guild. Here's one of my Chronicle sheets from playing it, because this wasn't just a card game where, it reused Paizo art and it used Paizo concepts, but was otherwise detached from the role-playing experience. No, it went very far in adapting everything about the role-playing game experience except for role-playing. You made your own character, like you could customize your character, and then you went on an adventure, and you did just different missions on the adventure, and in doing so, you learned new spells, gained new equipment, and you added them to your character's deck, customizing your character further. And then once the adventure was done, you had to shuffle down or discard down to a certain size deck, and you can discard some of your old equipment and keep some of this new equipment. So you were upgrading your character as you went, and you could play long-term campaigns of this card game. Without exaggeration, there were thousands of cards released for this game, because they would release box sets every few months based on the different adventure paths. And like the adventure paths they picked were wildly different in theme. So you got Rise of the Rune Lords, then you got Skull and Shackles, the pirate adventure. Then you got Wrath of the Righteous, which was, the demon hunting adventure. I mentioned they put out thousands of cards. So not just the adventures, they put out different decks for the different classes you could play. And do I have the Harrower? Oh, the Occult Adventures deck. Oh, that's fun. Now, I was only casually into the game, but Paizo gifted attendees of PaizoCon with character decks for the adventure card game. And they dedicated a lot of space at the conventions to fans of the adventure card game. Like, you would go into the ballroom that would, the year before, have been completely dedicated role-playing. About a third of it was instead sectioned off for adventure card game players. It was really like, it was a major part of being a Pathfinder fan, even though it was something that maybe a bunch of people were not playing. But I do remember when it was announced, and at the banquet that night, I was sitting at Crystal Fraser's table, and Robert Kenzie, who is a third-party publisher, was talking about, like, yeah, he heard about the card game, but he likes the actual Pathfinder game. And I joked at the time, oh no, it's an actual game. The card game is an actual game. It's not just playing cards. And I did not know how true that statement would be until years later, when just the game continued to grow and grow. And while it never rivaled Pathfinder as far as like the identity of a game called Pathfinder, it carved a pretty big niche in the history of Pathfinder, and the reason that this game is successful and beloved by gamers everywhere. Now let's get digital. Owlcat's Pathfinder CRPGs. Now, I just talked about all the ways that the adventure card game recreated the role-playing game experience other than the role-playing element of it. The same could be true for Owlcat's Pathfinder CRPG, computer role-playing game. It's a video game. The thing is that the way Owlcat recreated the Pathfinder experience is completely different from how the adventure card game recreated the Pathfinder experience. It is Pathfinder First Edition. Now, the card game may have summarized a lot of the adventures with just a little bit of flavor text, and otherwise victories and defeats were what was telling the story. The CRPG was embellishing the story. It was taking everything you were doing and incorporating into the world. Kingmaker especially, this was obvious because Kingmaker is a kingdom building game, and just like in the tabletop RPG, you are customizing the kingdom, you are making decisions, adding different buildings and elements to your city based on what you think the city needs. But in the video game, it goes further because the choices you are making along a moral spectrum affect the aesthetic of your kingdom. And so if you're playing a very evil game, you get, let's say lawful evil, you get a very twisted authoritarian city. Whereas if you're overall being good, it's a very open city, and there's just like a harmony to the sweeping, establishing shots across your kingdom. Now, there was a downside. Like I said, this was based on the role-playing game. It used the role-playing game as a system. Did not do a great job explaining how the role-playing game works. And so there were some people that are used to more streamlined, lighter role-playing systems for their CRPGs, getting confused and frustrated when they would encounter a creature with damage reduction, not understand how damage reduction works, and just feel like they are getting just handedly beaten time after time by what should be a random encounter. There was also just issues with the way it played in real time and other decisions that Owlcat made, because unlike a GM, they did not have the flexibility to just do whatever the players wanted. But the fan base did. Because Kingmaker had an active modding community, you could find mods and customize the game to your own personal preferences. And the more popular mods were actually officially incorporated into Wrath of the Righteous, which was the follow-up to Kingmaker, and is generally perceived to be a less buggy and smoother experience. Whether you like it more than Kingmaker depends on which adventure you prefer, because they are very different stories. But ultimately, you saw how Owlcat was learning from the community, taking that feedback and incorporating it into what they were doing. Those are some of the highlights of the ways that you can play Pathfinder, other than playing Pathfinder. And we know there's more to come. We've got Pathfinder Quest, obviously, which will hopefully deliver next year. We've got Pathfinder Gallowspire Survivors, which is a new video game. It is a roguelike bullet hell. So think of Enter the Gungeon, but it's Pathfinder, and you're entering Tarbafon's tomb. I am curious what the next breakthrough in this area is going to be. I can definitely see another role-playing game company trying to license some of the adventures that Paizo has done. And of course, it felt like we got so close to a Pathfinder miniature battle game when the original Pathfinder miniatures were called Pathfinder Battles shortly after the Dungeons & Dragons miniature game was ended, but that just ended up being an unfulfilled dream. As a Pathfinder fan, what kind of Pathfinder game would you like to play that's not strictly a role-playing game or any of the games we mentioned today? You can share your thoughts in the comments below, or go to nodirectionpodcast.com and join our Discord to join the conversation there. But for now, let's move on to my conversation with Jason and Joe about another way you can play Pathfinder, Pathfinder Quest. I'm happy to have you both here. I've got all kinds of handwritten notes. Talk about how Pathfinder Quest is the newest supplement for the Pathfinder role-playing game, and talk about how GMs can use it in their campaigns and
So
whatnot.
it's none of those things.
You got us. This is a gotcha interview. I see.
Oh, I see. Yeah, no.
Oh my God, the commitment to the bit.
All right, so I guess you're just going to have to explain to me what the heck Pathfinder Quest is.
Well, Pathfinder Quest is a cooperative fantasy adventure board game for 1 to 4 players, and you can tell I've said that a lot. It is a game in which you and your friends all make your own characters from an ancestry and a class, and you go on thrilling adventures in a series, interconnected story that kind of forms one larger campaign. So on its surface, I realize that sounds a lot like how the role-playing game actually is, and that's by design. We wanted to make sure that folks who, play Pathfinder find the game familiar. But we also wanted to make sure that as a board game, it was easily kind of picked up and playable by people who have never heard of Pathfinder before. So it's kind of a way to introduce people to our world, our type of storytelling, and our kind of brand of adventure play.
Which, all of that makes sense, and I could see sometimes you'll want an alternative to, committing to a 4-hour or multiple-year campaign of Pathfinder. But it is still a very robust game. So what was the decision to make sure that it was still more than just a one-and-done board game experience?
I think that our kind of approach to it was, we looked at the other games kind of in the market and said, what do we want to make? How do we want to fit into this genre? Because there's a lot of kind of fantasy adventure board games. There's things with a lot of weight and complexity to them. And there's some games on the opposite end of the spectrum that frankly are incredibly simple, right? You just basically are figuring, you move around and you roll some dice to beat things up. And that's kind of it. So for us, we kind of wanted to say, what can we bring to this corner of the board game market that's different? And for us, that was story and kind of a richness of the tale and your ability to interact with it, right? Your choices matter. They change how the story unfolds. They change how some aspects play out. And through your choices, through your roles, through your actions, the story kind of unfolds in different ways. And that can be as small as, what ancestry somebody picked influences an encounter. Or it could be something as large as we're going to make this decision and then we're going to play this adventure instead of that adventure. And that's going to change the outcome of what happens to some people in the story. And I think for us, the only way to kind of make that happen, to get that kind of richness and depth, is to include enough adventure that you can kind of get a sense of it. It's one thing to tell one story and tell it well. It's an entire another thing to tell a story over multiple parts in branching paths that kind of folds back in on itself, and by the end kind of pays off everything you've been setting up. It took us a long time to get it right. But I think folks are really going to enjoy it.
I have to say, when I was watching the video of the two of you and Rue playing a sample game that was put up on Paizo, one of the things I was impressed was how you would go from gameplay to referencing the book, and it just flowed narratively. How did you do that? That felt like witchcraft.
Joe?
It's a known mechanic to make a choice and then go read in what we have as a challenge book that sort of hides the results of what's going to happen. I think, deciding what to hide in there, and let me start over a little bit. So a lot of games you play where you have choices, sometimes they're kind of random. You might be asked to help somebody on the side of a road, and if you're heroes and you say, yeah, of course we're going to help them, there's like a 50-50 shot that they're going to turn around and stab you in the back. And for us, we wanted to have things be a little more heroic and more predictable while also still having a lot of surprises. So we're going to give you context and stuff in when you're making choices. Like, we'll tell you a little bit. There's someone at the side of the road and they need help. You're never going to get stabbed in the back probably, but you will spend time. Time is a resource in this game, and that's something where you might spend a little time now to help somebody else out, but that might cost you in the long run in a different way. Or if your party is not the kind to waste time helping a random stranger, then you'll probably get some, you'll save some time later on. But yeah, the challenge book, sort of interplay of the adventure book, which sets up adventures and tells you what's kind of happening in context, and then the challenge book, which is the results of your choices and of your dice rolls in a lot of cases. That's where the magic happens, I think, mostly.
Yeah, we wanted the flow of the story to feel like all of the pieces were kind of working in concert, right? You kind of flow from the adventure book, you use the challenge book when needed, you come back to the table, you flow between encounters. All the information is there for you. And we just felt like that was a cleaner overall approach for people at the table, in that it everything's kind of written to work with you once you've made your choices, once you made your decisions. So it all just kind of flows naturally. There's never any like, well, let's look this up on a table and say, it's all kind of right there for you. So some of that's just building the ease of play into the game structure itself. It's why the challenge book and the adventure book and whatnot are so big, because so much of that material is just kind of laid out for you.
Now, Joe, you said something that I want to thank you because it inspired a G.I. Joe related anecdote. But this is a G.I. Joe Find Your Fate, which is basically an off-brand choose your own adventure. And at one point, I am asked whether I trust somebody or not. And if I trust them, they are Zartan, the Master of Disguise. And if I don't trust them, they were an innocent scientist. And I still hold it against this book for cheating.
That
makes me upset.
So we're all on the same page. Pathfinder Quest will never do that to me.
I think I wouldn't say never, but I will say this. We every time you make a choice, there have been clues and breadcrumbs along the way that you either got or you didn't get. And it's possible through your choices that you don't have all the information to make the best choice. That can happen. There are a few points in the story where it's like, oh, do you want to do this thing? You can. But had you made the right check in an earlier encounter or something, it would have been like, yeah, whatever you do, don't do this, right? And you maybe didn't get that, right? So I think for us, the main difference is just not betraying your good faith decisions, right? So if we present, hey, there is an orphan on the side of the road and you need to get to where you're going, but they're just asking for, some help to get out of a bear trap they're caught in. I'm making this up. This is not in the game. We don't put orphans in bear traps, I swear. That, if you make the decision to try and help this person, they're not going to end up being a villain, right? Not that I haven't done that plenty of times in my career as an adventure writer, but we didn't do it.
Yeah. The two things there, like there's not, we tried to stay away from like right and wrong choices, and just every choice has a consequence. And, and you will often kind of know what that is, or have a sense of like I said, time's a resource, and that's often going to be it, but it might be something else. And the other thing I've completely forgotten. So there you go. That's the two things.
Going back to the sample play, one thing I did appreciate was one of those choices where it was basically, do you want to barrel forward? Do you want to take your time? Or do you want to take a lot of time and make sure it's also safe for the next person? And the good in me was like, well, I definitely want to take more time. But again, you said time is a resource. So can you explain how time puts pressure on the decisions that you have to make?
Yeah, so in every adventure that makes up this campaign, you're going to be tracking time, and it's not the actual time spent at the table. It's basically you have a time tracker, this beautiful thing made by Ken Hamilton in-house. That's an hourglass that fills with sand as you kind of turn it. And basically every time you, as a group, decide to spend one time, everybody gets a turn to attempt exploration challenges and do cool stuff in the environment. And then every time you have a combat, that is one time, no matter how many rounds that combat takes. And as you go, every adventure treats it a little differently. Sort of the intro adventure, which is a tutorial, will tell you very little, but at the end you'll find out, oh, if you spent this much time, read this entry in the challenge book, and if you spent more than that, read this other entry. And that's pretty common. And the consequence in the first adventure is very like mild. It's basically someone yelling at you or not, someone being more of a jerk about how long you took to save them.
How
And
dare you
that's
not save me faster?
yeah, and that's intentional, right? So that there's not like some lasting consequence if you on your first try through the game happen to take some extra time. That's fine. But in later times, you're going to learn, in later adventures, you're going to learn like, oh, at night, monsters come out. So maybe we should not spend too much time. There'll literally be a thing like, if the time tracker's at this or higher, go to this encounter. It's like, I wonder what that's going to be. And other times, things are burning down and you're trying to race against the clock in that sense. So there's lots of different ways we use it, and we try to keep it interesting to the point where after a tough combat, you can always spend time to recover and heal up a little bit. But should you, or should you just press on like you saw, I think, in that sample adventure? So
Let's talk about character creation. How long would it take me to make a character, and how different will a custom character be from one another?
It will take you under 5 minutes to make
Okay.
a character. It is very simple. You start by taking the stack of ancestry cards, and assuming we hit all our stretch goals, there will be a fair number of those to choose from. um, uh, 18, I think.
18, yep.
Nice.
Yeah, 18 ancestry cards. And so there'll be, like I said, assuming we hit all of our goals, there'll be 2 copies of each ancestry, and they're a little different because they each have their own background on it, and you'll choose one of those. And then in addition to that, you'll choose a class. And the class will then come with a series of other relatively straightforward choices. So, for example, if you play a wizard, you're going to get a couple wizard class cards automatically. And then you will be handed 4 spells, and you get to choose 2 of them. And that's kind of it. You're done. You'll collect your equipment card. You'll also pick a portrait card to match your ancestry. And there's 2 portrait cards for each ancestry, one that looks more of like a fighting character and one that looks more like a spellcasting character. And you'll find your pawn for that character as well. All told, this process takes 5 minutes. But the next person who decides to play a wizard could choose a different ancestry with a different background. They could choose different spells and fundamentally have a kind of different play experience. Your ancestry does influence what your character can do in a meaningful way. It gives you some bonus to skills, and it usually gives you some other interesting perk and benefit as well that will play out throughout the campaign. There are points of the campaign where it's like, are you a barkeep? Then maybe you get this result automatically instead of having to roll. And barkeep's one of the background on one of the cards. So one character might get that benefit. But at some point in time throughout the story, your background's going to matter at least once. So that's character creation is very simple, but it is important. It's not just a choice that you make once and then congrats, you get an extra bonus number, and now we never refer to it again. Those choices matter a lot.
And then the intro adventure, after that intro adventure that teaches you the rules, you can change around your character. And now that you know how to play, you can say, I'd rather do this, make this choice. But then after that, you level up after every single adventure. So which means you're going to, some of your statistics are going to change, like how many dice you roll for an attack or whatever, or your defense or your hit points, excuse me. And then you're also going to have a choice of class cards. At pretty much every level, you're going to have a choice between at least 2 things. And again, the spellcasters might have more choices. And so your character is going to like branch out in so many different ways compared to anyone else who plays that character just based on your class alone.
And when we get to the final adventure, like how much space am I taking up with all of these class cards and all the choices I made?
You're going to have a good number of cards. You're also going to have your cool items that you found. I think you probably have 10-ish class cards or more, depending on your class. Again, the spells are going to be a few more. And those are going to be, some of those are once per adventure, once per combat. So it is a lot. Like jumping right into 8th level would be tough, I think, for anybody, but the most experienced sort of board gamers. But the way we introduce you to your new stuff, like one thing at a time, basically you have a whole adventure to use your new thing that you got, or a couple new things you got that level, and then by the time you're ready for the next adventure, you get another new thing. And so at that point you'll have lots of options, but you should be pretty familiar with them all, to the point that it should be that was something that we kept an eye on throughout design, was like, we want you to have access to a lot of cool stuff, but we don't want you to be sitting there like, cards spilling out of your hand, like, I don't know what to do, like there's too much. So it's a balance for sure.
Playtesting for this, we particularly kept an eye on this, and especially for the higher level scenarios, we made sure to bring back playtesters that had already played some lower level scenarios so that they had some experience with some of the cards first. And we saw that there was some challenge jumping right into a higher level. But frankly, for most of the players, because we had several playtesters come back for multiple scenarios kind of in a row, and for them, the pickup was instantaneous. They were like, yep, I know this character, I'd prefer to play them, and I'm just going to add this one card, and we're good. Because at most levels you get, one or two cards and maybe another piece of equipment or two. And frankly, some of that goes away because some of it's consumable. So, you only get to use it once. But yeah, I think at the highest level of play, you're going to have a fair number of cards, but you will have earned those cards gradually over time.
So I was somewhat concerned about how much space this would take up when it was first advertised and talk of all the miniatures that were in the box. I was like, I'll need to break out the wargaming table to play this. And so when I saw how small the table you were playing on in the demo was, like, you have taken into consideration that not everybody has infinite space to play a game of this size.
Jason in particular did, yeah.
Yeah, part of my... Okay.
I was going to shout out you, but you can talk about
Joe,
it.
you go ahead.
Okay. So Jason, I was over here with these map tiles that we're reusing in all these adventures. They're double-sided. There's 17 of them. And I'm just like making these sprawling, like, linear, sometimes non-linear, other times maps. And Jason was like, people have to play this on a real table, like in real life. So let me just tweak some of these. And he made sure that they all fit in a nice, tidy footprint that leaves you plenty of room for your, for your class card and your your level card and your ancestry card and all that stuff for all the 4 players, while still maintaining an interesting layout for the map. So good job, Jason. Sorry to step on you 6 times while you were trying to explain that you did that.
I think for me, it was, one of the fun things about making board games is that there's a physicality to it that you have to kind of take into account. How big is it? How does it sit on the table? In some cases, how do you make miniatures? How do you make, custom dice? How do you make standees and pawns and all these other components? It's a lot more than what you get in, your traditional role-playing game product. So there's kind of a puzzle aspect to it of like, how do we make this thing awesome, but also make it so that it fits on like a card table? And that, like, making that happen for Quest was a bit of a trick. And it basically came down to the map once all the tiles are on the table, the play map can't be bigger than 2 foot by 2 foot. If it's bigger than that, it's too big. It just is eating up too much of the table. It's hard to see a way that players can get their stuff on the table with it and still be able to have, at least a spot for a coaster and a beverage. That's important. I think we don't want everyone so far away that they're not, interacting and enjoying the game together.
Now, one thing that struck me about this game is just how hyped Paizo seems to be for it. Like, you put out a lot of products, but this one stands out as something that the whole company seems to be getting behind. So what is it about Pathfinder Quest that has Paizo so excited?
Well, I think for us, right, we've been, Joe and I have been working on board and card games now for a few years. And getting kind of a board and card game line built up inside a company like Paizo is a bit of a trick, right? It's a company that's designed to make role-playing game products. And for us, we've been trying to learn the process, figure out how to make these things, how to best market them, how to best bring them together. And when we looked at our initial schedule, we kind of said, okay, there's a bunch of games we want to do. We've got good ideas for them. We think they're going to be fun. Elemental Stones was a blast to put together, relatively straightforward. The Starfinder Infinity deck, was an entirely different kind of challenge, creating multiple different kinds of card games to fit within one box, all themed to Starfinder. We started working on a game called Monster Match, which is just about to come out, which involves dating monsters. All these games we kind of looked at them and said, these are great. These are fun games. We think people are going to like them. But in the back of our head, we always kind of knew we wanted to take a big shot. And a big shot means probably a big box with a lot of pieces in it. So Pathfinder Quest was one of the earliest things we pitched, but it took the longest to make. We've been working on this game for like 2 years. And, just looking at the size of it, the scope of it, and Joe and I spent a good solid year just tinkering with the core engine and figuring out how the stories worked and kind of figuring out how the game worked. So when it came time to show the rest of the staff kind of what we had been cooking on, I'll admit, at first there was a whole lot of, wait, what is this? And then as the pieces started coming together, it changed from, wait, can I play more of this? And it's a fun journey to take. I've been with Paizo for a long time, and I've made a lot of kind of the big long-term projects I've been behind. And there's always this gradual understanding and awakening within the company of what you've been cooking on and what's coming together. And it's always really fun to see everybody else kind of hop on board and realize what we've been trying to pull together for a long time now. So that fevered pace just ramped up through the roof here in the past several months as we got to like the final finished components, because this game is done, right? It's finished. It's actually already at the printer. And everybody internally getting a chance to see it, getting it out to influencers, getting it out to people to do video shoots of it, and building demo copies of it. Folks could actually see what the finished product was before we even sold it, which is pretty unusual at Paizo. Normally, when we see it, it's the same time all of you see it, at least in its finished form. But not so with Pathfinder Quest. We did everything early because we wanted to be able to showcase it for the crowdfunding campaign. So the hype internal, it's real, right? They're excited about it because they've seen the real thing. They've gotten to play with the finished game. They've gotten to experience it firsthand. And that's just a different experience for us, right? That's a kind of step apart from anything we've ever done in the past. So I think internally, frankly, folks are just excited to play a fun fantasy board game. And we're excited to finally kind of get it out there. This has been kind of the longest project on the Paizo Games docket. And it's exciting to see it have such success.
Yeah.
Now, you said it's finished, but surely there is more Pathfinder Quest to come. Can we get a hint at what kind of expansions and sequels we might get in the future?
I think, when we walked into this as a campaign, we kind of said, we're going to design everything that's part of the crowdfunding campaign in advance. We're going to have all that stuff done so that the game can be at the printer and we can have this thing out as quickly as possible. And at the same time, we said, and if it's a success, we're going to do more. What more? We don't know yet. Kind of depends on the level of success that we get, right? Because the crowdfunding campaign, we're doing it so that we make sure we print enough. This is a big game. It's an expensive game. We don't want to print too many. We definitely don't want to print too few. So we don't want to, we don't want a warehouse full of these, but we also don't want a bunch of fans who don't get a chance to play it. So I think, the size of the crowdfunding campaign, the number of backers, the hype and enthusiasm, the response to, it as it comes out is really going to dictate to us where we take this game next. I will say this. The game is designed to be a kit of parts. It is a box of modular components. It's map tiles, it's monster cards, it's pawns. None of this stuff is destroyed or written on as you play. Nothing's changed. You can reset the game to its base configuration when you're done and start over if you want, or give it to somebody else to play. But that means that we can make new things using the kit of parts. We could release, say, a PDF adventure that is a new adventure. It wouldn't necessarily fit with the 8 that are in the box because that's a contained story, but it could be a standalone thing that uses the parts in the box to play a different story, right? We could do that. We can also release smaller expansions that include a small story, maybe a new character class or two, a bunch of new monsters. Those sorts of things are very possible with Pathfinder Quest. So I think where we go with this depends entirely upon all of you. It depends on how successful this crowdfunding campaign is, what kind of hunger we see for more. I can tell you this, Joe and I are excited to make more of this game, using this engine, playing in this world. There's so much more we could do. But really it's going to come down entirely to how much folks want it.
Welcome to the October Fireside Chat. I'm joined by one of the most impactful and omnipresent Pathfinder enthusiasts I know, Lucas Servideo. Lucas brings his resourcefulness and creativity to so many aspects of this hobby, from in-person memes like Drengildrang's head in a jar, to his multiple efforts to encourage younger fans to try Pathfinder. Lately, he's been painting up a storm and sharing his finished miniatures online as part of Painttober 2025. Lucas, welcome back to No Direction.
Thanks for having me back, Ryan. I'm glad to be here. I thought it was interesting that you had me on for this subject because, it is a Pathfinder show, and sometimes I don't paint Pathfinder.
So let me walk you through what I was thinking, because we're all about Pathfinder Quest this month, and Pathfinder Quest has a whole bunch of miniatures in the box. That was one of the selling points, that there was close to 100 original miniatures tied into the game. So originally I was like, well, I should talk to like a professional miniature painter and bring them on the show, and they'll get tips for people painting the miniatures. But like I did the math, and I'm like, we need more quantity than quality. Like a professional painter will get people to their finished miniature will be that much better. But I think when people who backed Pathfinder Quest get their 100 miniatures and realize like, oh, this is a big chunk of miniatures, how am I going to handle the logistics of painting these to even a basic quantity? And that's where I think, like, not to say that you don't bring quality, but the fact that you do a finished miniature of an above average but achievable by the average fan for your miniatures, that's why I thought you were the great guest for this month.
Oh, thank you. I have been told I am a great tabletop mini painter by a couple professional friends that paint miniatures. Wow. So I'm good for getting quick minis out for the tabletop. So like I will paint things for a scenario that I start painting on a Thursday for a game on Saturday. Okay. And get them ready for the tabletop. And I developed my own kind of speed technique for getting them done. But I also tend not to sleep much, and I tend to just focus on those miniatures for 2 hours and kind of batch paint as I do it.
Well, we're not going to recommend that people don't sleep, sorry. Do paint, don't sleep. But like, just to give you, compare it to me, so this is the miniature, or this is the character I'm playing in my current campaign that's been going for about 5 months now. And as of session 2, I got this miniature from Hero Forge, and then we've got a 3D printer in the group. So it was printed by the second session. And I just have it in my head like, oh, just one Sunday, I'll bust out the paints. I'll even like let my daughters paint some of my extra miniatures, and we'll make a day of it. And it's just making the day of it is the part of the plan that I haven't done. So, yeah, I just want to kind of pick your brain of you've been painting a miniature a day for Painttober. Actually, let's take a step back and start there. Painttober, what is it? How did you get involved in it?
I'm big on the Reaper Discord, so I follow that. I participate in their Reaper Challenge League, where you paint miniatures, you earn points, and you can get Reaper gift certificates.
Cool.
So, and certain minis are worth certain points, but you're only painting Reaper miniatures. So, one of the members of the community put up Painttober based on like Inktober and Drawtober or Drawloween or whatever the other 31-day challenges are.
I'm participating in one, and I'm just going to queue up because I forget the name, but it is not nearly as memorable as some of the other ones. I am doing Phantasmicaloween.
So what is that challenge?
That is drawing a day. And so what I've been doing normally, like we've got the calendar for the family, and normally I just cross it out and I try and like do like seasonal colors for the X's that I put over the dates. So this month I am just drawing the next prompt into the little calendar box, because I am not an artist, but I believe that with a tiny canvas, I can convey an idea. So it's Pumpkin Ghost was the first one. Whimsical Witch was a fun one. It's basically an Inktober without the association with the people that kind of stole the Inktober name.
Yeah.
But listening to the way Reaper is doing that, I kind of hope Paizo does something similar, because I think that's a good way that people will be able to paint their Pathfinder Quest miniatures and build a community around that part of the game. Since, playing the game is only part of the hobby, and that's true of a tabletop version, like a board game version of Pathfinder, and the role-playing game.
Yeah, I actually think that painting miniatures is a very big subset of the Pathfinder role-playing game, as well as now Pathfinder Quests. Because you need those miniatures to play the game. And I have seen people play games with miniatures unpainted, and
makes you a little sad.
That's a choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it makes me a little sad. Like when people bring an unpainted white miniature to the table. We had a guy that did custom miniatures from Hero Forge, paid to get them printed, and had them in whites, and never painted any of them.
I can't judge.
No,
but I can say the intent. This is not the finished product. I do have plans or hopes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about plans then. So you've got this challenge that you are participating in, and you want to make sure that you're putting out a miniature a day. So what does that look like? How do you meet those goals?
Well, when I found out about it, on October 1st. They were actually a day late for for posting it up. They were supposed to post it at the end of September. And I found out about it, and I immediately rushed to paint a miniature that I had sitting around, which was a flying mouse.
Cute.
Yeah, adorable. I got that from Impact Minis at Gen Con, and it was a rare mini because I'm like, oh, that's kind of cute, cool. I have never seen a flying mouse before like that. So I painted that up real quick, posted it. Then I needed something for Moon, and I wanted something simple because I had a lot of stuff planned on the next day. So I found a moon-shaped shield and a hammer, and I just painted that. Then after that, I chose every mini and I prepped the first 20 days.
Like the miniatures are just all in a row on a shelf based on the prompts?
They were based like up on the top of my desk. I had a little shelf, and that's where they were. So I could grab them and pull them down.
All right. So now translating that into how it could work for Pathfinder Quest, I suspect the miniatures will be marked off as like at what point in the quest you're most likely to encounter them. And so I guess people can line them up by CR, and then just kind of go down the line in that way.
You could also line it up as player characters.
Okay, go on.
So start off with player characters first. So paint whatever the heroes are. Then go with first level of quests, second level of quests, and go like that. You can also do it by color. Like sometimes when I'm painting batch monsters, I choose colors. So if I know I'm going to be painting a bunch of devils and I'm painting red, I take anything that I'm painting that needs red in it, and I do it that way.
And are you like, you don't feel that, oh, I used the same red for things of like maybe slightly different theme, like there's a red armor and a red skinned devil. You're okay with that?
I am. But I have a background in artist. I have an artist background. I used to be a graphic designer. So I'm good at blending colors. So if I'm using black, white, red, green, and blue, I will mix colors together. So while I have that same red out, I might mix a little blue to give it a purple tint. Or I might add a little white to it to lighten it up. Or add a little black to make it more of a brown. So it has a different feel to it. That little kind of shading and little kind of touch does make a difference.
Now, what paints do you use? Do you use the squirt bottles?
I use Reaper, the standard Reaper, actually. And those have the little dropper bottles.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like the I do have all my shades are the Citadels.
And that's like watered down, right? That's
the watered down. Yeah, you apply after, it's a wash. And I use all my Citadels for the washes. I find that they make a great wash. Other than that, I don't use anything else of Citadel because I've had somebody gave me a full set of Citadel colors, and within 6, 7 months, most of them were dried out because the cap didn't close right. And I just, I know there's ways to fix it, but I was like, I'm done. I just like the dropper bottles because they seal better. And I also use Monument Hobbies, which has a similar dropper bottle, but a different top.
Okay. I don't know Monument Hobbies. What differentiates them from other paints?
They have a very heavy pigment, so their colors are very vibrant. They also have a very basic naming convention. So you have dark green, green, light green, light bronze, and they have basic color names. So it actually works out really well.
But I like memorizing that ultramarine is slightly darker than cerulean.
Yeah. It's weird with the Reaper ones. It's like you have Harvest Orange. Harvest Orange is a metallic orange. Then they have Pumpkin Orange, which is just a bright orange. Then they have Fireball Orange, which is another orange. I like the simplicity of the Monument Hobbies. Plus, I like their pigment because it makes everything really vibrant.
Now, the majority of the miniatures I have painted was when I was into Warhammer. So, that was a long time ago. I've gotten out of it. And yet, even with all of the RPG-related miniatures that I've painted, the Warhammer one still, quantity-wise, outnumbers them. And I just remember reading White Dwarf magazine and them saying, now mix these colors. And I'm looking at the pots that have, the screw top, and they're just, unrelated colors. I'm like, what do you mean mix them? So when I got, I was actually gifted a set of Reaper paints from Brian Stiltz, who used to work at Reaper Miniatures. And yeah, once I got the squirt bottles and I realized that's how you can mix, and it makes highlighting a lot easier. Like that.
Oh yeah.
I cannot see myself ever going back.
Yeah, and if you have a wet palette, you can mix live and it works a lot better.
So I don't have a wet palette. I just have dollar store, the thing you pour the paint into, like a bunch of little pots. It's an artist thing. What's that called?
No, it's just a palette.
It's just, okay.
Yeah, just a palette. One of the things you might want to try, which is actually really good, and I've been using that when I travel, is the silicone poppers, the fidget poppers.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
The ones that have the little
Citadel, as I thought we were talking about Games Workshop again. Yeah, sorry. Silicone poppers, yes.
Those are great because you can actually, when the paint dries, you could just pop out the paint chip and then you can just do a quick wash.
That's good. So I don't have to get the nail polish remover out.
Right. And I've been using those when I travel because sometimes I don't have, because I have a travel set that I bring when I travel to a different state for training. So I can paint while I'm away.
And yeah, that's clever because you could squish it in, you don't have to worry about it breaking.
Yeah.
And you can get them for super cheap. I like that. All right, I'm learning. Can we go back to wet palettes? I've heard about these for years. Param used to always tell me how great they were. I've never even tried one. I really don't understand what a wet palette is.
A wet palette is something, so if you're doing a long day of painting, usually you thin your paints. You put a little bit of water in there. They suggest DI water or, some sort of water that doesn't have contaminants.
Oh.
Or they have
contaminated water, I guess.
Yes, so do I. But I also use paint. They have a paint thinner that you could put in there as well. But now that I'm in a lab, I kind of get some DI water from the lab that I work in. But you mix that on there. But if you're going to be painting all day, the wet palette has a sponge in there and then a coating, a sheet of paper on there that keeps your paint wet, so you don't have to keep adding that because it picks up the moisture from through the sheet of paper from the sponge. And then all you have to do is add a little bit of water to the sponge while you're painting, and you can keep painting with the wet, and you can actually mix better because you can actually see where you're going on the wet palette.
And once I'm done, what's the upkeep like on a wet palette?
Well, if you need the same colors for a couple of days, some painters I know leave their wet palette for like a week, and then they wash them off, because a lot of the newer like parchment paper that they have with the palette are washable. So you could just rinse it under the sink, rinse out the sponge, wash out the tray, and you're good to go.
And is this something you can use for years, or you'll
Yeah.
replace it after? Oh, okay.
No, you'll replace the sponge after a while, because the sponge will get funky. Like they definitely suggest using putting copper in your wet palette.
Putting
So
copper in it?
Yeah, it helps with keeping the mold out.
But does that just mean putting a penny on it, or?
Older style pennies can work. Game Envy actually sells these little corner pieces
Okay.
that hold down the wet palette, hold down the paper in the wet palette so it doesn't curl up on you, but they're also made of copper, so they keep your
Yeah, it does
wet
two
palette.
jobs at once.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So these are some of the things that people that are, planning for their Pathfinder Quest miniatures, which are supposed to come before the end of the year, which is only a couple of months away. But
Which is cool because they're coming so quickly.
yes. So that only gives them a couple of months to prepare. So we've talked about some of the supplies they need. How about space? How much space do you think about 100 miniatures is going to take up?
It depends.
Okay.
Like really, 100 miniatures could take a large amount, especially monsters. And how are you going to store them? I use tackle boxes with foam for my miniatures when I store them, but the bones are also a more durable plastic. I also have miniature figure cases that you can get on Amazon or in your friendly local gaming store that have foam cutouts specifically for the sizes of miniatures.
So, but your painted miniatures, they all go into storage? You don't have a shelf with everything on display?
I actually have my wife got me for a present a curio cabinet that
nice.
has a large amount of my miniatures in there. And then I have mini boxes that have the foam that for the ones I take. Like if I know my game is going to require cultists, I put all my cultists in this. I do need another curio cabinet, but I have my better minis and, in this curio cabinet that's like 6.5 feet tall. And underneath, I have all my extra paints that I rotate out every once in a while.
So let's talk about, are there any tips that you wish you had when you were first getting into miniatures?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be perfect the first time. A lot of people look at miniatures that people are painting like professionals you see online, and they think, oh, my miniature needs to look like that. Your miniature doesn't have to be perfect. Like, are you having fun painting your miniature?
Yes.
If you are having fun painting your miniature, that's all you need to do. Are you happy with the way the miniature looks? Yes. Then you're good to go. That was one of the things that I didn't get at the beginning. And I would spend hours painting a miniature just for tabletop. And I would screw up and I would clean it and repaint it. And that really stressed me out. And then I was like, you know something? If I'm happy with the way it looks, that's the way I'm going to keep it.
When I was doing Warhammer miniatures again, one thing that I kept judging myself for is that my 100th miniature, when I have a lot more practice and have developed new techniques and stuff, I will then compare it to, my 10th miniature and be like, oh, this old one doesn't live up to the new standards, and so I've got to start over on it, or I've got to start brushing up on it. And that was probably a bigger deal because, in an army, you want a certain amount of uniformity. But that is something that I had to get over when I started doing RPG stuff. And it's like, it doesn't matter if you've got one high quality guy on the table and some that are maybe not your best work, but they're done and they stand out.
Like, I don't care if a player has a miniature that only has basic colors on it. Like they have a dab of flesh tone for the face, they have black for the hair, they have silver for the chest and silver for the sword, and they're done. They put paint on the mini, they tried, they're happy with it. They're good to go. They tried. And I think that's great. I think that is one of the best things that people can do, is that they try it. They understand that, it's not going to be great at the beginning, but they tried it and they're happy with what they did. You can learn and get better as you go along. Like, I've been painting since
Math.
2012 is when I started painting my first minis, in December of 2012.
Oh, wow. Like, I'm just impressed you got it right down to the month that you started.
Well, what I do is every like 2-3 years, I get 3 of the miniatures that I painted originally and I repaint them.
Oh, cool.
So, like, I want to see how I did for progress, but I don't want to do the same miniatures. So I will pick, a couple that I did and go, all right, here's this one. I'm going to paint this. And this is what this one looks the first time. This one looks the second time, and this one's the third time. So there's some I have, and I see the progress of, like, oh, look at the eyes. Look how bad I did the eyes on this one. But look at the eyes on this one. Look at the shading I did. Look at how I added layers to the beard. So it actually looks like a beard. It's not just straight gray.
That's really cool. There's no question. That is such a cool idea.
And when I hit 10 years for my minis, I actually found every miniature that I painted in the first year. And then I painted the same miniature over again for every miniature I did.
Wow. Do you have trouble finding some of the old ones?
I did. Okay. I did. I actually had a couple that I could not find, and then I found them after the fact because I put them in a box with my pre-painted miniatures, which are now down my basement collecting dust.
So you owned the miniatures already, and you just didn't... Like, I've just figured these are old miniatures. You'd have to go and shop and maybe buy them secondhand.
No. You already owned it. I had a bunch of them already because I was planning on this project.
Oh, okay.
But then there was a couple that I had to order from Reaper, or I found, and I said, hey, I don't have this mini. They don't sell it anymore. Can I, borrow yours? And asked a friend for it.
You don't really borrow a miniature that you're going to paint.
You do, because then you give it back to somebody and you go, here, I painted this for you. But people would give...
Go ahead.
People end up giving me the miniatures and said, here, keep it. And so,
It is one of those hobbies, isn't it? Where we all have bigger ideas than we have realistic time for, and somebody's painting miniatures and we're not. So you might as well give the miniature the joy that it's determined. Like in a Toy Story kind of way, these things deserve to be painted.
Oh, they do. And I've got a long list of miniatures to paint, and which is why I didn't back the quest. But I have a friend who backed the whole thing, so he's going to let me paint his miniatures.
Wow, that's nice of him.
Yeah, it was. I thought so. Because he didn't tell me until after it was done.
Good news. I've got a job for you.
Yeah, good news. I got a job for you. And you get to paint them so you can play the game with me. It's like...
Okay. Now that's starting to sound like he's scratching your back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, we've been going for about 20 minutes here. I think it's a good time to wrap it up. Is there anything you want to shout out to, like anywhere people can find you online that you want to bring attention to, or just something cool that you think people should know?
I have my second quest coming out at the end of the month.
Oh, cool. Congratulations.
Dragon's Plea.
Nice.
It is my second quest for Pathfinder. And it's an all ages quest. And I actually made a custom miniature for that one.
Oh, cool. So let me go back a step. Are they rating quests by age now?
No, what they did is Josh Foster. I was going to say
Josh Frost. That's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
Yeah, no, that's a name that is from the Wayback Machine.
Yeah,
he was the OP manager when I started organized play.
Yeah, like at season 0.
Right. So when I started organized play, that was my contact when I was trying to get into it. But no, him and I talked to Gen Con about, what would be good for a line for, Pathfinder adventures. And I said, well, what about all ages? Because we've been doing Academy, and we had been adapting existing scenarios that weren't really always PG-13. And he ended up thinking about it and came up with the all ages tag for the quests. So
Nice.
The quests are ready for anyone. There's more silliness than violence. They're meant for anyone. You could pull it with your family and play for all ages people. And I've got 2 done. And with the quest line ending, because they don't need it anymore, because they're switching the length of scenarios to 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours, to make it easier to schedule at game stores, which makes more sense. They don't need the quest line anymore. So, but I was told that they're going to be working the all ages more into the scenarios because, they want more people to play. It is. And, there's 6 all ages scenarios out there. And I'm writing the last one for the all ages.
Cool.
So
congratulations.
Yeah.
Dragon's Plea, that's intrigues me, and just the title alone I think would be enough to get my daughters excited.
Yeah, it should be good. There's a couple interesting characters, and I'll show you the mini for one after.
Right.
Because I don't want to spoil it for other people.
Fair. Sorry,
but
listeners, this is just between me and Lucas.
I don't want to spoil it. Yeah.
Let's wrap this up then. So when is Dragon's Plea coming out?
It's coming out next week.
Oh, wow. Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So it's going to be right before Halloween.
Cool. All right. Well, once again, congratulations. And thank you for this, Lucas. I know I definitely need to get a wet palette. This is something that I've been told for years, but you finally convinced me why I have to do it. And I think just in general, like, you've given us a lot of good tips that people can put towards making their miniatures, like enhancing the miniature side of this hobby.
Yep. Thank you very much. I'm glad to help out, and people can reach out to me. I'll send you my updated contact information.
Cool. Thank you. And I'll include it in the show notes. Thank you for joining me for another installment of No Direction. If you liked what you saw, like the video. If you really liked what you saw, subscribe. And if you really, really liked what you saw, you can go to patreon.com/no direction and support us, financially. Until next time, I'm Ryan Costello, and if you want to find the path, you need no direction.